30 years ago, in a small town nestled in the heart of Georgia, Evelyn Carter stood nervously in the marble-floored lobby of First National Trust Bank. She was a young woman then, just 28 years old, with dreams as big as the sky. After years of saving every penny from her job as a schoolteacher and side gigs tutoring students, Evelyn had finally scraped together enough for a down payment on her first home. It wasn't much, a modest two-bedroom house on the edge of town, but it represented everything she had worked so hard to achieve: stability, independence, and a place to call her own. But that day at the bank shattered those dreams. Clutching her paperwork tightly, Evelyn approached the loan officer's desk, her heart pounding with hope and anxiety. The officer, a middle-aged white man named Mr. Whitaker, barely glanced at her application before shaking his head. "I'm sorry, Miss Carter," he said dismissively, "but your credit history isn't strong enough. We can't approve this mortgage." Evelyn protested, explaining how she had never missed a bill payment, how her references spoke volumes about her reliability. But Whitaker cut her off with a condescending smile. "These things take time," he said. "Maybe next year." What Evelyn didn't know at the time, what no one told her, was that her rejection had little to do with her financial qualifications. It was part of a broader pattern of discrimination against black applicants, a practice known as redlining, which systematically denied loans to people of color based on their race rather than their ability to repay. For Evelyn, however, the explanation was simple. She was being judged not by her character or her work ethic, but by the color of her skin. Walking out of the bank that day, Evelyn felt a mix of anger, shame, and determination. She vowed never to let anyone else dictate the limits of her potential again. Over the next few months, she found another way to secure her dream home, a smaller, less conventional lender willing to take a chance on her. But the sting of rejection lingered, fueling a quiet resolve deep within her. One day, she promised herself, she would show them all what she was truly capable of. Over the next 3 decades, Evelyn poured her energy into building a life defined by resilience and success. Her teaching career flourished. She earned advanced degrees, published articles on educational equity, and became a beloved figure in her community. Outside of work, she invested wisely, leveraging her modest income to grow a portfolio of properties. Each rental unit she acquired brought her closer to financial freedom and further away from the memory of that humiliating encounter at First National Trust Bank. Yet, even as her wealth grew, Evelyn never forgot the injustice she had faced. She often thought about the bank, wondering if they still operated under the same discriminatory practices. Occasionally, she drove past its towering headquarters, now expanded and modernized, marveling at how untouchable it seemed. To Evelyn, it symbolized more than just a financial institution. It represented systemic oppression, the barriers erected to keep people like her from succeeding. And though she tried to focus on her achievements, the idea of confronting that symbol of exclusion gnawed at her. Then, in early 2023, an opportunity presented itself, one so improbable that Evelyn initially dismissed it as fantasy. A friend who worked in finance mentioned over lunch that First National Trust Bank was struggling financially. Years of mismanagement, scandals involving predatory lending practices, and declining customer trust had left the once mighty institution teetering on the brink of collapse. Its board of directors was quietly seeking buyers, desperate to avoid bankruptcy. The news ignited something in Evelyn. At first, she laughed it off. A black woman buying the very bank that had rejected her? It sounded like the plot of a movie, not real life. But the more she thought about it, the more the idea took root. Why shouldn't she be the one to take control? She had the means, the experience, and most importantly, the motivation. If she could pull it off, it wouldn't just be a personal victory. It would be a statement, a testament to perseverance and justice. Determined to explore the possibility, Evelyn assembled a team of trusted advisors, including lawyers, accountants, and investment specialists. Together, they conducted due diligence, analyzing the bank's assets, liabilities, and market position. What they discovered was both daunting and exhilarating. While the bank was indeed in trouble, its core infrastructure remained solid. With the right leadership and vision, it could be revitalized, not just as a profitable enterprise, but as an institution committed to fairness and inclusion. By the time Evelyn submitted her offer, She was ready. Her bid wasn't the highest, but it came with a compelling proposal, a plan to transform First National Trust Bank into a beacon of ethical banking, prioritizing underserved communities and dismantling the discriminatory systems that had plagued it for generations. To her astonishment, the board accepted. On the day the sale was finalized, Evelyn stood outside the bank's gleaming headquarters, keys in hand, feeling a surge of emotions she couldn't quite put into words. 30 years after being turned away, she was now the owner of the very institution that had tried to shut her out. The moment Evelyn Carter officially became the owner of First National Trust Bank, she knew her work was just beginning. Owning the bank wasn't about revenge. It was about transformation. She envisioned turning a symbol of exclusion into a pillar of empowerment, a place where people who have been historically marginalized could find opportunity, dignity, and trust. But achieving that vision would require dismantling decades of entrenched practices, rebuilding community relationships, and proving to skeptics that change was possible. Evelyn's first order of business was assembling a leadership team that reflected her values. She recruited individuals with expertise in ethical banking, community development, and financial inclusion, many of whom came from backgrounds similar to hers. Among them was Marcus Johnson, a former regulator who had spent years investigating discriminatory lending practices. Marcus became Evelyn's right-hand man, helping her craft policies designed to eliminate bias and promote transparency. "We're not just running a bank," Evelyn told him during one of their early strategy sessions. "We're rewriting history." One of Evelyn's boldest moves was implementing a groundbreaking algorithm for loan approvals. Unlike traditional systems that relied heavily on credit scores, a metric often skewed against low-income applicants, this new model considered factors like rental payment history, utility bill consistency, and even personal references. The goal was simple: ensure that every applicant was evaluated fairly, regardless of race or socioeconomic status. Critics warned that such an approach might increase risk, but Evelyn stood firm. "Risk is part of growth," she said. "What's unacceptable is perpetuating inequality." To signal her commitment to change, Evelyn held a press conference announcing her plans for the bank. Standing before reporters and cameras, she recounted her own experience of rejection 30 years earlier, holding nothing back. "This bank once told me I wasn't good enough because of the color of my skin," she declared, her voice steady yet filled with emotion. "But today, I'm here to say that everyone deserves a fair shot. This isn't just my story, it's our story. And together, we're going to make sure no one else has to face what I did." Her speech resonated deeply, sparking conversations across the nation about systemic racism in finance. Social media lit up with hashtags like #FairLendingForAll and #EvelynCarterInspiresMe as people share their own stories of discrimination. For many, Evelyn's journey represented hope, a reminder that progress was possible, even in industries long dominated by prejudice. Within the bank itself, Evelyn implemented sweeping reforms aimed at fostering inclusivity. She mandated diversity training for all employees, created mentorship programs for minority staff members, and established partnerships with local organizations serving underrepresented communities. Perhaps most significantly, she launched a grant initiative called Dream Start, which provided seed funding for Black entrepreneurs and small business owners. Recipients range from a single mother opening a bakery to a tech startup developing affordable educational tools for underserved schools. Each success story reinforced Evelyn's belief that access to capital could unlock untapped potential. Of course, not everyone welcomed these changes. Some longtime customers grumbled about the shift in focus, accusing Evelyn of prioritizing social agendas over profitability. A few board members expressed concerns about alienating wealthy clients accustomed to preferential treatment. Even some employees resisted the cultural overhaul, clinging to outdated attitudes. But Evelyn remained undeterred. "Change is uncomfortable," she reminded her team during a tense meeting. "But staying the same is unacceptable." As months turned into years, the impact of Evelyn's efforts became undeniable. First National Trust Bank began earning accolades for its innovative approaches to lending and community engagement. Its customer base diversified dramatically, attracting individuals and businesses that had previously been shut out of mainstream banking. Profits soared, not despite Evelyn's emphasis on ethics, but because of it. Investors took notice. praising her ability to balance moral imperatives with fiscal responsibility. Perhaps the most rewarding aspect of Evelyn's journey was reconnecting with the community she had grown up in. She made frequent visits to local schools, churches, and civic groups, sharing her story and encouraging others to dream big. During one particularly memorable event, she returned to the elementary school where she had taught decades earlier. Addressing a packed auditorium of students, parents, and educators, Evelyn spoke passionately about resilience and self-belief. "Don't let anyone tell you what you can't do," she urged. "If I can buy the bank that once rejected me, then there's nothing you can't achieve if you stay true to yourself." Behind the scenes, Evelyn also confronted the ghosts of her past. One afternoon, she requested a private meeting with Mr. Whitaker, the very loan officer who had dismissed her application all those years ago. Now retired and living quietly in a nearby suburb, Whitaker agreed to see her, though reluctantly. When they met, Evelyn extended her hand, surprising him with warmth rather than animosity. "I'm not here to settle old scores," she said gently. "I just want you to understand the ripple effect of your actions. That day you turned me away, you didn't just deny me a mortgage. You almost crushed my spirit. But look where I am now." Whitaker listened silently, his expression a mix of guilt and awe. By the end of their conversation, tears welled in his eyes as he apologized, not just to Evelyn, but to countless others whose lives he had impacted through careless decisions. It was a moment of closure for both of them, proof that accountability and forgiveness could coexist. By the time Evelyn celebrated 5 years at the helm of First National Trust Bank, the institution bore little resemblance to its former self. Renamed Equity First Bank, it stood as a shining example of how businesses could thrive while championing justice and equality. Evelyn's legacy extended far beyond balance sheets and profit margins. She had redefined what it meant to lead with purpose. As Evelyn Carter entered her 6th year leading Equity First Bank, she found herself reflecting on the profound transformation that had taken place, not just within the institution, but within herself. What began as a personal mission to reclaim dignity and rewrite history had blossomed into something far greater, a movement toward systemic change. Evelyn's journey was no longer about proving anything to anyone. It was about creating opportunities for others, ensuring that future generations would never face the same barriers she once did. One of Evelyn's proudest accomplishments was the establishment of the Equity First Community Fund, an initiative designed to address systemic inequities in housing, education, and entrepreneurship. The fund provided grants and low-interest loans to individuals and organizations working to uplift marginalized communities. In partnership with local governments and nonprofits, it financed affordable housing projects, scholarships for underrepresented students, and training programs for aspiring entrepreneurs. Each project bore Evelyn's fingerprints, embodying her belief that economic empowerment was a key to breaking cycles of poverty and disenfranchisement. The impact of these efforts rippled outward, transforming entire neighborhoods. Once neglected areas saw a renewed investment, with small businesses flourishing and homeownership rates climbing. Families who had long been excluded from traditional banking systems now had access to resources that allowed them to build wealth and stability. For many, Equity First Bank became more than just a financial institution. It was a lifeline, a symbol of hope in a world that often felt stacked against them. Evelyn also used her platform to advocate for broader policy changes, speaking at conferences, testifying before Congress, and collaborating with advocacy groups to push for reforms in lending practices. Her voice carried weight not only because of her success, but also because of her authenticity. She spoke from experience, sharing stories of struggle and triumph that resonated deeply with audiences. Systemic racism isn't just a problem for Black people to solve, she often said during speeches. It's a collective responsibility. We need allies willing to listen, learn, and act. Her advocacy extended beyond words. Evelyn partnered with tech companies to develop tools aimed at increasing financial literacy among underserved populations. Mobile apps offered free courses on budgeting, saving, and investing, while AI-driven chatbots provided personalized advice tailored to users' unique circumstances. These innovations democratized access to knowledge, empowering individuals to take control of their financial futures. Critics initially dismissed such initiatives as overly ambitious, but the results spoke for themselves. Thousands of users reported improved credit scores, reduced debt, and increased savings. Despite her achievements, Evelyn remained grounded, always quick to remind others that her success was built on support of countless individuals who believed in her vision. She credited her team at Equity First Bank, her family, and the community that had stood by her through thick and thin. "I didn't do this alone," she said during an interview. "This is the work of many hands, many hearts. And it's not finished yet." In recognition of her contributions, Evelyn received numerous awards and honors, including honorary degrees from prestigious universities and invitations to join influential boards and councils. Yet, none of these accolades meant as much to her as the gratitude expressed by those whose lives she had touched. Letters poured in from borrowers who had purchased their first homes, entrepreneurs who had launched thriving businesses, and students who had pursued dreams they once thought impossible. Each message reinforced Evelyn's conviction that true success was measured not by titles or trophies, but by the lives you impacted. Perhaps the most poignant moment came when Evelyn returned to the house she had bought all those years ago, the one she had secured after being rejected by First National Trust Bank. Now retired from teaching, she decided to renovate the property and turn it into a community center. Dubbed the Dream Start Hub, it served as a gathering place for workshops, mentorship sessions, and networking events aimed at fostering collaboration and innovation. On opening day, Evelyn stood on the front porch, addressing a crowd of neighbors, friends, and supporters. "This house represents more than bricks and mortar," she said, her voice trembling with emotion. "It's a reminder that we are capable of overcoming even the greatest obstacles. It's proof that resilience, determination, and faith can move mountains. And it's a promise to every person who walks through these doors that your dreams matter and your potential is limitless." By the time Evelyn stepped down as CEO of Equity First Bank, the institution had grown into a national powerhouse with branches in cities across the country. Under her leadership, it had disbursed billions in loans to underserved communities, supported tens of thousands of small businesses, and helped millions achieve financial independence. Her successor, Marcus Johnson, vowed to continue her legacy, ensuring that the bank remained a force for good in the world. Today, Evelyn Carter is celebrated not just as a trailblazer in finance, but as a champion of justice and equality. Her story serves as a testament to the power of perseverance, the importance of confronting injustice, and the transformative potential of second chances. Through her courage and vision, she proved that even the most formidable barriers could be dismantled one brick, one loan, one dream at a time.